former racists, sexists, homophobes, etc. of Reddit. What changed your mind? I grew up in a really racist white family hating everyone who is not like us. At the age of 15 I started to get African American friends and I realized I was just stupid thinking they are worse than me. At the age of 21 I got a African American girlfriend. My family didn't know about her because they were still racist. After a year of dating we decided to live together. She also wanted to know my family. I first talked to my brother, and he was very cool about it. Then I went to my father. He wasn't as chill as my brother. He told me that I either break up with her or I'm out of family. I was 22 with a good paying job and I knew my brother wouldn't give a crap about my father and still keep in touch with me, so I chose love. I didn't talk to my father for more than a year. One day he calls me that he is very sorry and wanted to get to know my GF. We were at my father for hours talking about everything. He finally accepted her. Now she is my wife and pregnant with my son. We live really close to my father, so he helps us a lot with everything even though he is still kinda insecure about my wife. Not me but my dad. When I first came out, he kicked me out of the house and told me that I was going to hell. Then his favorite priest at church said that everyone needs to be more accepting of all people and he knew he was quite bad at that. After he got manuscript he realized that he definitely needed to be more open-minded. I think the realization that he might not have much time left gave him the extra push. My mom and dad even went to a play that had two men kissing, and my dad didn't freak out. Now he is in full support of me dating a woman rather than a man. It was seen as acceptable to make fun of gay people in the area I grew up in. It wasn't the nicest of neighborhoods. Gay, queer, Nancy and poof were insults that were thrown around like nothing, among others. Kids called each other gay. Parents, including mine, called their kids gay. It was so normal that it lost all meaning. Fair to say I learned my lesson when I grew up, got into my teens, and came out of the closet. I wouldn't say I was a homophobe, but growing up in the Catholic Church I definitely wasn't embracing of gay culture. I really thought that it was a choice that people were consciously making. What changed me was a professor in college. We were discussing the subject, and he said shittown 12,076. Gay people are persecuted all over the world. In some nations they are even put to death. Who would choose that? It put it in perspective for me. Before I turned 20, I used to be a massive homophobe, not to the point of mocking people, but being uneasy around gay people. I use this as a form of deflection, because I was insecure of my own identity. When I first started having homosexual feelings for other men I was beyond terrified that it could be true that I was gay myself. Currently I'm 29 and living as a gay man and willing to accept this is how I am. I realized at that point that I shouldn't be uneasy or angry at what people are, gender, orientation, race etc. But if I do it should be about who they are on the inside as an individual. I wouldn't say I was really any of those things. My parents are fairly sexist and homophobic and very racist. I grew out of that way of thinking fairly early at school. There was non-white kids in my class and I realized they were nothing like my parents would say about their race. I only ever got girly things as gifts, when I'd rather consoles and games like my brothers. The homophobic mindset lasted a little longer. I met some gays, and I realized I was not straight. Thankfully, for my openly gay sister's sake, they aren't as homophobic as they used to be. Still pretty sexist and very racist. Really just took someone to ask me why. I was a child, and I heard some racist, and especially homophobic things growing up, so I just repeated it without questioning it. This one time I was hanging out with a friend and her mom, when I was like 10, and we were talking about the German version of American Idol. I said something like I really like that one guy, but turns out he's gay, so I hope he loses. And when her mom asked me why I thought it was bad to be gay I couldn't answer cause, like I didn't know. Started questioning everything at that point, and tried to unlearn my racism and homophobia. I live in rural Washington state, on the east side of the mountains. It's very conservative there. I know, Washington and conservative aren't two terms you'd expect to see in the same sentence. But when your tiny town is sports oriented, big on hunting and farming, and overall very gun loving and close minded, what do you expect? My high school was predominantly white. There were probably a grand total of 5 black kids in the entire town. Teachers were old white guys who drilled Republican, racist, homophobic idealizations into your head. Everyone was very religious. My family was no exception. It took a long time for me to escape the toxic mindset I grew up with. It was even harder knowing that this was the only thing I had been taught, and suddenly changing the ideals you were raised on is no easy task. But my big game changer came when I was 16, speaking with friends online who were POC, and I happened to say something extremely ignorant and racist, specifically regarding reverse racism. They took time to educate me. I was and still am a closeted bisexual girl, so they pretty much explained that, in a way, reverse racism doesn't exist, because you cannot oppress the oppressors. Heard the song I'm Not Racist by Joyner Lucas, which opened my eyes a lot, especially about the All Lives Matter movement, and how it is a protest to the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a microaggression against POC and an example of majorities trying to silence minorities. I've still got a long way to go. But it's been a few years since that happened, and I'm on the right track, hopefully. One of my closest friends coming out as gay. We knew each other since kindergarten, grew up together, and were very close ever since. Just a month before he came out, I said to him that I must be a homophobe because I don't get all those gays and that must be just people wanting attention. Then, when he accidentally came out, it was groundbreaking for me. He explained everything, how he realized in his early life that he's gay, how he started seeing guys, how people treat him, how he feels, what he fears, etc. He was so patient and calm with explaining everything that it made me realize that it's not what I thought. I'm very grateful for that experience. Being raised in a Christian household, I never had any gay or trans friends growing up, and even as an adult couldn't realize why I had none. It was because I was subconsciously pushing them away and not making the same effort I would with any other. I was technically a homophobe. I talked with a good friend of mine, who is a pastor, and they gave me some great advice. I quickly realized that, even though I might not agree with someone on something, doesn't mean I can't love them and care for them like family. Still follow the Christian belief, and honestly, if anyone is gonna judge what we as humans do, it'll be God. So we might as well treat everybody with respect and compassion. It's what we would want ourselves. I wasn't raised by a racist family, but I did grow up in a very white area, so racist sentiment was quite common there. I don't think I met a black person until I was about 13 or 14, but I still mostly made friends with other white people. It was at that age that I started to hang out with these older kids. They were about 16 or 17 I think, who seemed cool. They played video games with me, played sports with me, went out to restaurants and cafes with me, etc. They also happened to be Mussolini and Stalinist National Bolsheviks. For those who don't know, National Bolshevism is a syncretic ideology that combines communism and fascism, or at least elements from both of them, and brought it up often to me. They basically told me that I shouldn't trust the mainstream media because it was all centrist or liberal propaganda, that I shouldn't befriend or listen to ethnic minorities, that anyone who thought differently were either sheep blinded from the truth or were trying to convert me, and many other stuff. I don't know how I bought into that bullshit, and I'm still ashamed at myself for listening to them, but they convinced me. I guess it was just because I was a pathetic ducking loser who didn't hang around with many people and they were just there for me. I started to become convinced that things like white genocide and the Great Replacement were true and inevitable, that black people and Arabs were inferior in some way, that capitalism and democracy were to blame for allowing this to happen, and that either fascism or communism needed to get into power in my country to put an end to it. I just dismissed people who disagreed as SJWs and shit like that. I think I snapped out of it when I was about 16. There wasn't any significant event that made it happen. Just realized how stupid and horrible all of it was. Unfortunately, some people don't change. My upbringing. I remember one time I saw on TV two guys kissing when I was like 3 or 4. I think it was some gay rights debate on the news or something, and I asked my parents what happens if a guy likes another guy. My dad answered it's against human nature and the church does not accept that. I was just 4 years old and didn't question my dad's answer. I just accepted his answer and went on with my day. When I was around 16 I started to question a lot of things they taught me. It might have also been a way to rebel in retrospect, and now I have pretty much the opposite view as my parents on social issues. By the time I started university I was pretty progressive, but that solidified it.